Hello and good day to you. In the previous video, we knitted the back of the sweater. So we'll continue now by knitting the sleeve of the sweater. As printed in the designer knit, here I printed the text summary because I want to know the rows of welt to knit, the numbers of rows of welt to knit, and also the needles to cast on. Then I still have the garment text of the sleeve of the sweater. It says cast on 44. Here it tells me like how it's going to be on interactive knitting in the designer knit software. It tells me row by row what changes to make and what to do. In the text summary, it just summarizes everything and also tells you the front neck, the back neck, the right front neck, the number of stitches to pick, and the numbers of rows to knit. So now we'll start knitting the sleeve of our sweater. I'll first of all cast on now. It says cast on 44 stitches. That is 22 needles on my left needle 22 to right needle 22. I'll push them to D position. I'll just zoom in so that you can see what I'm doing. And with my 1x1 needle pusher, starting from the left, I'll use this needle pusher to push every alternate needle starting from the left back to A position. If you notice, as I described in the previous video, you notice that when I place the needle pusher, this last needle moves because it's even numbered. But I'll bring it back to increase because we are told on the instruction in the instruction that we should cast on 44 stitches, which is 22 needles on the left and 22 needles on the right. Let me quickly cast on. My stitch dial is set to 2. That was what I used in the previous video because I want to cast on, and also it's for knitting my welt. Thread in my waist yarn and I'll just knit. I don't need to change my row count now, as you know. I'll have my cast on comb. Now I just need only one. I'll zoom out so that you can see properly what I'm doing. And I'll just knit few rows, just putting my yarn between my fingers to create a tension for it with waist yarn. I'll just knit few rows. Be careful so that you don't drop your yarn, and so that your yarn is in your yarn feeder and you don't drop your stitches. Ending with carriage on my left, I'm going to take my yarn out of my yarn feeder and hang the tail of the yarn on this yarn clip and remove the previous one. With my ravel cord, I'll put my ravel cord in the yarn feeder of the carriage, and I'm creating a tension with the ravel cord between my fingers. I'll just knit one row across, ending with carriage at the right. So So it's time for me to knit the welt of my sleeve, and here it says I should knit 9 rows of welt. But because if you notice, it says 9 rows of welt, and because I'm going to knit mock rib. Mock rib means you multiply the number by 2, number of rows you have to knit on your welt by 2, because in mock rib you will fold. If you watch the previous video, you will understand more, but I can still explain more. I'll still explain more in this video. Still on tension 2, because that's what I'm going to knit. I'll knit 1 row. Oh, I forgot to change my row counter. Okay, I'll just leave it on 1 since I've knitted 1 row. Remember to hang the tail of your ravel cord and your yarn in the clip of your cast on comb. So it says knit 9 rows, which means I'm knitting 18 rows. 9 times 2 is 18, because I'm going to fold the welt to form my mock rib. So I'll just go with the multi yarn. I'm knitting as I did in for the back of the sweater. Take my yarn through just going to cut it here. Take my yarn through the right place. Forgot to use the right speed. Like I said, I'm not going to edit because I want you to see my mistake and how I tend to correct them. So I won't make much mistakes. Not intentional. Sorry, 18. It's 18 now, and it's time for me to pick my. It's time for me to pick my the loop of my yarn. I'll just zoom in so that you can see how I'm gonna pick the loop of my yarn. Okay. Zoom out a little. You pick this on the loop. That's the loop before the raffle cord, and some people just pick only this, but I normally pick this first loop here and pull the needle out to secure it, and I'll pick this other one. And pick the bottom loop. In the previous video, I transferred this one and picked another one to increase. But I'm going to teach you another because this is a sleeve. I'm going to teach you another way of increasing, because you know we were to push 22 needles on the left and 22 needles on the right. But because of this mock rib, when I push every alternate needle back, I removed 1 needle out of work position because my needle has pushed it back. But I need to increase it so that I'll have the complete set of complete numbers of needles that has been needed for the garment, so that I can have the correct measurement. So just pick up. I'll teach you how to increase that one now later as we progress. But this first one, you still hang it on this last needle. You pick the loop of the second one, you just hang it on this last needle, and also on the second needle. You can see it extending between the two to secure it. Then you pick this loop, the bottom loop, and the first loop, and you pull it out. I'll just go ahead and pick some far again so that you can see. Okay, we'll pick this bottom loop, the loop of this one, the last loop before you can see the ravel cord. We'll pick it. And if you notice, we're going to pick this first loop here and bring out the needle to secure it. So we'll just continue across. I have to work this one first. You pick the upper loop of it and the base loop, bottom loop, the one before the ravel cord. Just continue picking to form your mock rib. And when we get to the end, especially on my left hand side, I'm going to teach you how to pick there's one loop there that is sort of hidden. You have to pick that one too. Okay, I'll just turn the camera a little to the left so that you see, and I'll zoom in. Okay, there is a loop here. I'll remove this ravel cord so that you can see it clearly. That this ravel cord is hanging on. Let me see if you can see. There's a loop here that this ravel cord is hanging on. This is the loop that this ravel cord is hanging on. You have to pick it and hang it on the last needle. So I'm just going to pick it. And you hang it on the last needle. This is not the second loop. This one is the second loop, the loop for the second needle, and you hang it too. This is the loop for the second needle. It's different from that end loop. And you hang it. So we'll just pick these other ones. Remember, you have to pick the first upper loop too. But it depends on you. Some people just pick only the base loop, this bottom loop, and leave this upper loop. But I love picking both of them. Okay, now we've knitted with our push on needles to D position, because I'm not knitting any pattern knitting, I'm just knitting plain stockinette. And remember to set your carriage on I'm getting the dust from this carriage wool lanes. Remember to set your carriage. The setting of your carriage should be let me zoom out a little so that you can see it. Remember to set your carriage to knit stockinette on both sides of the carriage. Both sides of the carriage, sorry. So now we've knitted our welt with the multi-yarn, and we knitted 18 rows. We need to set the stitch die to 3. Remember your auto tension too. We just zoom in so that you can see that my auto tension is still. Auto tension is at the mast. We just zoom in so that you can see the number that is still on 3, which you used in the previous one, in previous video to knit. You can see it is on 3. That's the auto tension. Remember, it affects your tension gauge. It has to be the same tension, auto tension number you use to knit your swatch gauge, so that you can get your tension. And also the stitch die too has to coordinate. Remember, the auto tension unit also affects the flow of yarn into your yarn feeder. And if it's too tight, it makes your carriage to to change position, like instead of it knitting stockinette in my knit slip stitch, because those levers at the side of your carriage can move if the tension is too tight. So make sure as you knit, you check your tension, your levers, and make sure it's right. We'll continue knitting now. You can check your manual for this to understand more. Continue knitting now. I'll just break off this multi yarn so that I can use my main yarn to continue knitting. I'll knit one row, then I'll increase that the 24th stitch. I was supposed to 22nd stitch on the right that I'm to put back to working position. Okay. So we'll be knitting the right hand sleeve. I'll fix my yarn into my yarn feeder. Row counter is going to be on 0, 0. And my stitch die is going to be on 3. Then I'll knit one row. I can now shift this a little. I don't know if you can. Let me zoom out a little. So that you can see the full knitting and see all the manipulations I'll be doing. Okay, I can now remove this ravel cord, not from the knitting, just from the clip, so that I can hang my main yarn on the clip, because the clip is kind of full. On the instruction, it says knit row 1, I should knit, then I should knit over 44 needles. So now let me increase my needles before I forget. Since I've knitted one row, I want to increase my needles. I'll zoom in for you to see how I'm going to increase. Since the needle was pushed back at the right hand side, I'm going to increase it from the right. I'll move this last needle, the stitch from this last needle, the 21st needle. I'll move it and pull out the 22nd needle and put this stitch in. So the 21st needle is open now. I'll just go to the heel here of this needle, pick this stitch, pick the heel of the stitch, and hang it to increase. That's how you increase. Then there won't be hole in your work. Well, I'll do another increase in other rows, but not now until we are told to increase. So just keep on knitting. It says row 1, row 2 to 16 I should knit. Remember, stitch die on 3, main tension, main and stitch die, and I'll just knit to 16 before we do the next increase. Tension is kind of tight here. If you place your hand, if your tension is tight, you find that it's tight, you can place your hand the back one and just move it slightly. Move the first needle in a little, then start moving it. You find that the tension start getting loose and up, and then come back to normal. But if you don't place your needle, it starts pulling threads from these other set needles, which is not right. You should pull thread from the main yarn. Yeah, that's why you have to pull one of this last needle back to. You have to pull one of the last needle. Let me zoom out so that you see what I'm doing. When tensions become too tight, especially when you knit and you find that some stitches are tight, you just pull this needle back as the needle where the yarn is on the carriage side of the bed. You just pull the needle backward to pull a lot of yarning, and placing your hand at some of the already knit needle, just slightly use your fingers to push all the needles, and then you find out that the stitch is not too tight now on your tension, on your needles. Okay, let's continue knitting. That's 16. I'll zoom in so that we can do the increase and you get a full view of increase. Because we are going to increase one. In the instruction it says increase one on your left and increase one on your right. So I'm going to tilt the camera a little so that you see the full view of the increase. So it said before knitting row 17, increase one at left and one at right. So I'm going to put this last needle, don't know if you can see that clearly, just zoom in a little. Good. Okay, we'll move the stitch of this last needle to a new needle. That's we are increasing, and then we pick the heel, the stitch, the heel of the stitch. We'll pick it and we'll hang it on the middle needle where we move the stitch from. We'll do same on the left hand side. So if you didn't get this first one, you might get the second one. I'll just tilt the camera so that we can do the increase at the left hand side. Alright, so I'll move the last stitch to a new needle, and the heel of the stitch, which is here, I'll pick it up. You can see picking it up with my transfer tool and put it in this empty needle where I moved the stitch from. And so I have increased. Now no hole is going to be in my work. So I'll zoom out and we'll continue knitting. You can practice a couple of increase and decrease if you've not learned that. So it says row 18 to 33 we have to knit until before we knit row 34 we'll do another increase. So let me just quickly whenever you leave your carriage on your needle bed, make sure you know the direction. If not, all your stitches will drop. So it's proper not to leave your carriage in the middle of your needle bed. We'll have about we've knitted 33. So what we have to do an increase before we knit row 34. I'll zoom in again in case you missed the first one. So that you can see an increase being done. Alright, I'm going to move the stitch, the last stitch. I'm going to move it from this needle. Don't know if you can see it clearly. Let me see if I can get more of the zoom. Alright, okay. I'm going to move the stitch of the last needle out and move it to a new needle. And I'll take the heel of the stitch and place it on the empty needle. Simple increase. So we'll do the same on the right hand side of the bed. I'll just tilt the camera to the right hand side of the bed so that you can see how an increase is being done. So I'll just move the last stitch from this needle. I'll transfer it onto a new needle, the new needle we are increasing into. And I'll take the heel of the stitch this stitch and I'll place it on the empty needle. And I'll continue knitting until it's time for us to make another adjustment. So I just tilt the camera so that you can see my full work and the progress we've made. So we're going to make our next increase while we are on before we knit row 51. So until then, let's zoom up. If you have not really practiced how to decrease or increase, you can start practicing with a sleeve. You have fun because they tell you to decrease and they tell you to increase too. So you can practice both. I'll just cut this one here. I don't know, it's kind of just tight, sticking my tie. So just tie so that I'll continue knitting. Don't take much of your time. Get to 50. So it's time for us to increase again. So I'll zoom in. and we'll do an increase. You take the last needle, you move it in onto a new needle. You take the heel. Let me zoom in so that you can see that one. Not too much. Okay. We take the heel of the stitch and place it on the needle we move the stitch from to a new needle. We'll do same on the right hand side, because the sleeve, most time instructions they give you, they'll say increase one on the left and increase one on the right. So we do same here. We take this last needle, move it into a new needle we are increasing into, and we take the heel of the stitch, place it in the previous needle. So we just continue knitting until row 67, where we do another increase. Then from there we'll start with the increase throughout. If you notice, sorry I didn't zoom out for you to see everything. So now you can see your full work, knitting properly done, good. So now you can see that the carriage is on the left. The next instruction is to start decreasing for the armhole of the sleeve. One point I want to make you should note here is that the same method you use in decreasing for the back of the sweater or the front of the sweater, for the armhole of the sweater, is the same way you're going to decrease here. This is because you want your sweater to fit properly. You don't want the armhole one and the back or the front to be longer than the armhole of the sleeve. You want it to fit properly. So here I'm going to just zoom in and we'll cast off stitches from it. Let me see what the instruction says. It says decrease, when knitting the next row, decrease 5 stitches at left. And because we stitched that the wrong side will be facing us, it makes sure that most of this decrease, especially when you're decreasing more stitches in a row, it makes sure that it tells us exactly what, it makes sure it makes such a decrease. It makes sure it makes such a decrease on the side the carriage is on. Since we've been decreasing multiple stitches, let me zoom in so that you can see how I'm going to decrease. First, I'll push out the last needle. I'll just tilt the camera so that you can see the decrease going on. Push out the last needle. Wind the yarn towards the side of the carriage over the needle. When you push out the last needle, the stitch of the needle will go behind the hook, this hook. So we'll take the yarn from under and just wind it over the hook. Then we'll pull it through the stitch at the back of the hook. We'll take the second stitch. Don't know if you can see that. Let me come in closely so that you can see it a bit more. Okay. So So we're taking the stitch from the second needle, we transfer it onto the first, and we take both stitches from the first and transfer it onto the second needle. I don't know, let me see if I can zoom into, because I really wanted to get a grasp of what I'm doing. Okay, I'll just adjust the camera because I really want you to see what I'm doing, because all this decrease yeah, I think this one is going to give us a very good view of the decrease. Alright, so we take, we put both of them here, and we remove that last needle from work position because we are decreasing. So we've decreased 1 and we are supposed to decrease 5. We now take this yarn. If you notice, the stitch is at the back of the needle bed now. Oh, sorry, the back of the yarn hook. We take the yarn, we wind it around the hook of the needle, and we pull through both stitches. We take this second stitch from this needle, we transfer it onto the first needle. We take both stitches and take it back onto the second and push the first out of work position because we are decreasing. That's the second stitch, remember? And wind the yarn through and pull through this one. We continue this process until we've casted out 5 stitches. So remember, the same way you casted out of the one for the sweater, the back of the sweater, the same way you are going to cast off for this. Like, I've lost count now. What I need to do, the good thing about Zena, it tells you the numbers of needles that you should be on your needle bed. So it says, like, I'll be knitting over 47 needles. If I count, and good thing of LK is because it's color coded. I just count 10, 20, 30, 40. So I'm on the 47th needle, really. Okay. So I finished decreasing 5. Let me just make sure it's the right one. Okay. So because I'm going to lose this one, I'm not going to cross it over because normally because this is the last stitch, I've decreased up to the last stitch. I'm not supposed to cross it. All I need to do was just to transfer them into this. Transfer both stitches there without winding the yarn over the hook. Just leave both stitches without knitting it through on the hook, because I want the carriage to knit it, because it's going to knit through. I don't want it to give me 2 rows here, making me have hole in my work. I'll do same on the other side so that you understand more what's needed. And I'll just knit 1 row cross. I'll zoom out and turn the camera to the right hand side. We are told to decrease 5 stitches at right. So I'm going to decrease 5 stitches to at right. You see, it's decreasing the side of the carriage, which is a good thing. If you take where the wrong side will be facing you, it make sure it calculates it, and make sure it arrange your decrease to the side of the card, especially when you are decreasing more stitches. So we're going to push the last needle out. I don't know if you can see this. Okay, let me just tilt it a little so that you can see more of it. And we're going to wind the yarn over the needle. Take it. I'm going to wind the yarn over the needle. And make sure it's on the hook. And pull it through. We'll take the second stitch and transfer it into the first stitch, or the first needle we stitch. I will take both of them, both stitches, and transfer it back into the second. I will take this one out of work position. We wind our yarn, that's one stitch casted. We wind our yarn round the hook, and we just knit it through. Then we'll take the second stitch here and transfer it to the first, as we did in the for the first stitch before. Transfer both. We take our yarn, wind it around the hook, and knit it through. We'll continue in this process until we've casted off 5 stitches. And remember, always take the needles that you've casted stitches from out of work position, because you are decreasing. So if you lost count, check your instructions. It tells you the needle you should be on when knitting. Oh, I think I made a mistake, so I'm going to rip my knitting. I'm not supposed to cast off now. I'll just rip my knitting and I'll just I'll hang it. I'm not supposed to start casting off. Wow, what a mistake. Alright, can go through. Okay. Now you see I've made some mistakes, and I've made some mistake, and I'm going to now pick up my stitches and hang them. I've loosed it and I'm going to pick them. I'm not supposed to start casting off until row 71, and I just looked at my row counter. It's showing 68. What a mistake. Oh, I'm so happy I saw it now. I can still continue and just omit it and make sure that when next I'm knitting the second sleeve, I'll correct that. I'll just omit those rows. But I've already, I don't want to do that. I just want to. So I'm going to knit this manually. And guess what? I'm going to rip this whole row out. Take my needles, I'm going to take my, oh, sorry, I missed one here. Just going to pull it out. Pull my stitch in. My transfer to hold the stitch. And I'm going to knit it manually. If you check your manual, it teaches you exactly how to pick drop stitches, how to reform stitches, so that the purl, since I'm working on the purl side, to make sure it's a purl that is here, not this knit side that is on this purl side. So still go through your manual. It helps a lot. Just play around with it. Now I'm going to turn my row counter to 67 so that I don't make that mistake. going to my row counter to 67. I'll take my yarn out of my yarn feeder and I'm going to lose that row. I'm going to now lose this row. So losing the row, I'll just place my hand and gradually just pull the stitch. But some people pull it across. Depends, you have to practice before you pull it, or you drop your stitches. I'm going to zoom out so that you see it. You have to practice how to rip a row or lose a row. If not, you drop your stitches. I normally just pull it out upward. I've been doing this for long, so I'm used to it now. Before, if I make a mistake, I don't rip the roll, I just continue. But now, since I've practiced a lot, sometimes I even drop my knitting because I forgot that, oh, I didn't put the yarn in. And you know what I do? I still pick up my knitting and hang it back. See, before, when I was a beginner, no way. That's the end of that knitting. So the first time this other time I had courage to pick up my knitting was that I picked it up surprisingly. Okay, let me count my needles and make sure it's on the right set. 52 and this 40, this 50. Now decreased. Okay, 67 now decreased. So it's supposed to be 52. I think I've decreased wrongly there. Alright, we'll just continue. Not to take much of your time. So 68 to 71 to knit. So I'll just pull your yarn backwards from through the at the back of the tension mask. You just tug at your yarn. So, okay. I'll just knit to 71. Not making that mistake. Okay, 71. Now it's time for me to cast off 5 stitches at the left. I'll just turn the camera and zoom in so that I can cast on. Just wanted to see what I'm doing. Okay, so we take this last needle, we'll pull the stitch out, we'll wind the yarn around the needle and we'll pull it through. Then we'll take the second stitch, we'll transfer it onto the first needle and transfer both stitches into the second needle and push this needle out of work position or working position. We take the yarn, wind it across and pull through these 2 stitches. We've already decreased 1, so we are going to decrease 5. Remember, let's do it again. We take this second stitch from the second needle, transfer it onto the first. We take both stitches from the first and transfer it back into the second. Wind our yarn through around the hook of the needle with both stitches and we just pull through. We remove this needle without stitch from work position. The needle without stitch is always the last needle. Remember that. do same. Wind it around. So here I'm going to count to make sure I've decreased the actual number. I don't want to have too many needles and too little needles. I want to have just the right needles. So I've already pulled it out. So it says I should have 47 needles in work position. Okay, 47 needles in work position. Alright, so I've already done that. So what I'm going to do is just to transfer these 2 stitches. I'm going to transfer these 2 stitches onto the second stitch onto the first, and I'll just move them into the second back and push the first out of work position. I'm not going to need this because this is the last one I'm decreasing, and that is how you do each and every one of them, that last one, so that you don't have hole in your work. You don't need the last one, that you just transfer it and leave it there. Remove the 5th needle out of work position, the 4th needle, depends on the stitch, and just when you transfer, you just leave it there because it's the last stitch, and your carriage is going to move across and knit. So going to knit, and I'll just turn the camera to the right hand side so that we can do the other decrease there at the right hand side. All right, so we're going to do that at the right hand side. Remember, always count your needles and make sure you have the right needles. All right, I'm going to knit 1 row, and you can see that I'm going to now decrease on this side of the bed. I'll push this needle to non-working position. I'll wind the yarn around it. Just wind your yarn around it. Pull it through the hook. Then you take the stitch from the second needle, transfer it onto the first needle with stitch, and transfer both of them onto the second needle, and remove the first needle from work position. You take your yarn, you wind it through. We are decreasing 5 stitches, so we do same second stitch on from second needle onto the first needle. Take both stitches from the first needle and back into the second needle. Take your yarn, wind it around the second needle with both stitches and pull through, then remove the first needle from work position. You continue in this until you get to the last one. So let's count our needles. I love counting my needles. I want to be the right needle. So I'm supposed to be on we'll take the stitch from the move it from the first needle, both stitches. I'll put them in the second needle. Okay, I'll move them onto the second needle. Then I'll move the first needle out of work position. Then we'll knit 1 row or 2. So our row counter shows 76, and the next decrease of to take place on row 7 before we knit row 78. So we have to knit 2 rows. I'll tilt the camera to this other side. We'll just be tilting cameras, all because we need to practice our decrease, and I want you to see it in case you miss it. By the time you see me doing a couple of times, you get it through. Remember, take your second stitch in, take it through. Okay, we don't need to cross the stitch, sorry. And I'll just keep on decreasing like that. Take the second stitch onto the first needle, take both stitches, transfer them back into the second needle, and we need 70. We need that's 77. So we need 78 and 79. That's we need, and we'll decrease again to row 80 before we need root 80. So I'm going to take the stitch, second stitch, move it onto the first, move both stitches back into the second, remove the first one from work position or working position, and I'm going to do same at the right hand side. You know the instruction says decrease one at left and one at right. So this is how you decrease one at left and one at right. So we're going to now knit, and the next we'll be making our decrease when we are doing before we need row 83. So the decrease will start from here this time around. Second stitch to the first needle, both stitches back into the second needle, remove that one from work position. Then remember, always remove your needle from work position if you are decreasing. You take the second stitch. I think I should tilt the camera a little. Okay, take the second stitch, transfer it onto the first needle, both stitches back into the second, and remove the first needle from work position or working position, and knit row. So the next decrease will be before knitting row. So when knitting sleeves, you find out that you decrease a lot. We are shaping it, right? We need to shape our sleeves. We need to do things so that they fit. But when you are used to it, the first time it might become tedious, but when you are used to it, wow, you will love it. Okay, let me zoom out a little. Okay, so we're going to the next one is going to be when I'm working on row 88. So we just zoom in for the changes to be done. Okay, second stitch, move to first needle, move both stitches back to second, remove this one from work. And when you get that reading, you're already used to it. And you need rows, and always keep track of your needles. Keep track of your needles. 91, and we do seam here. Now just tilt the camera to work on the other side. Say, why am I doing this? I'm encouraging the beginner. Encouraging the beginner. I was once a beginner myself. I was so scared of opening the box of my knitting machine. For years, I started with the SK280. It's a punch card knitting machine. And for years, I left it in that box, the same way it came. But one day, as I was watching Craft TV, I saw this Lk150 I went for it to add to my collection. And then I knitted with it. I got my SK280 and I started knitting again. I got the designer knit software. I just knitted because I couldn't calculate, so I didn't bother about calculating. I was just following patterns to see if I can read it. I was using Machine Knitting Monthly. I got the magazine, Machine Knitting Monthly magazine. I tried one pattern and I was able to knit it just following instructions. Then I saw designer knit software on it. We advertising it, so I went for designer knit. I got the software. First of all, I tried the free download, the trial. I downloaded it. I played around with that if I really liked it. And then, as you know, things change. I got the software. I started playing around with the software. And before I knew it, wow, I'm designing, I'm knitting. I knitted a garment that was my size. Couldn't believe it. Just putting my tension and it calculates it for me. I'm putting the length and all those things, calculates it for me. Wow, unbelievable. I've never been good at mathematics, so I just told myself, this software is for you. So I got the software and I started knitting, and I knitted for my children, and I fell in love with designing. So that's my little tale. But I played around, I made mistakes. So we decreased one at left. We're almost casting off now. We finished our knitting. Don't worry, don't take time like this just because I'm teaching at the same time. I'm trying to make sure things go right. And if we it said we are going to cast, we are on the last row to cast off, and it says in row 102 you knit over 16 needles. So I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and yes, 8. So we have 16 needles, and I said knit 16 needles, cast off, remainder, end of piece. Alright, so we finished knitting our sleeve. I'm going to cast off. Just going to take my yarn out of my yarn feeder. Going to push the last needle to work position. I'll zoom in so that you can see how to cast off. So our next video is going to be on the front of the sleeve. The front of the sweater. And after that, we are going to stitch it, and then after stitching, we are going to stitch, and then we are going to knit the neckband and then complete garment. You can check at the end of the video or the beginning. You will see where you can download this pattern and just practice. Even if you don't get the right tension gauge, you can just practice and see if you can knit with it. Just try the manipulations, all the things you need to know when knitting. And when knitting the front garment, we are going to learn how to do the hold position. We are going to practice hold position because it's a V garment, a V neck. I'm going to do the hold position. And get your sewing machines ready. We'll be sewing with the sewing machine, piecing this garment together or stitching the garment together using a sewing machine. I hope you enjoy knitting, and I hope you are encouraged getting into machine knitting so that you can knit lots of garments. A hand knit look in a fraction of time. I think that's the motto of the Machine Knitting Monthly. Alright, so have fun knitting, and you can send me your pictures and I'll try and paste them on my blog. And always have fun knitting. If you don't get it right the first time, just play around. If I had known, I would have wrapped at my SK280 for a very long time, for years. When I say yes, I mean 2 years plus. But then, I tried it one day, it was difficult. I just wrapped it back, and then it stayed for 2 years or so, or more. But here I am today, having fun knitting. So we finished casting off. Now just break my yarn. I'll just break my yarn. Let me zoom out so that I'll just break my yarn and pull the tail of the yarn. Pull the tail of the yarn through this loop, and that is it. You remove your yarn from your cast on comb. You can remove it before you start casting off. So we just remove our cast on comb. Let me zoom out. Remove our cast on comb. Sometimes I remove it before I start casting off because it helps a lot. And this your ravel cut, you just hold it, make sure there's no knot, and you pull it, just pull it out of your knitting, and you see that when it's out, your waist yarn will drop, separate from the wealth of your garment. And here we are, our sleeves knitted. I've already knitted the second sleeve, so I'm going to take the camera to that position and show you. You have a glance at it. I've already knitted the second sleeve, so I'm just going to place it on the table for you to see. Then I'll set the camera for you to see the sleeve we've knitted, and we've knitted the back of the sweater. So the next video is the front of the sweater. See you in the next video. So get ready. We're gonna do some knitting. And don't forget, get your sewing machine or your tapestry needle if you don't use a sewing machine. We're gonna have fun. And you're going to start knitting. And I would love to see some of your lovely project, or some of them. So this is the sleeve. Just leave it. This is the sleeve. We finished knitting the sleeve. So hope you have fun knitting and enjoy yourself. Thank you for watching. You can also subscribe so that you don't miss any of my videos. Still rolling. That's one thing with knitting. Machine knitting, most of the time it rolls, but don't worry, When we stitch them together, they won't have where to roll to. So hope you subscribe so that you don't miss any of my knitting, and have fun until the next video. Thank you for watching. Remain blessed.